Okay, you're live.
Ah, finally. Well, we've had some massive
Technical difficulties.
technical difficulties that I don't understand, and Mark probably figured it out enough to get it going.
Yeah, so sorry, folks. What we had to do is we had to ditch the old stream and start a new stream. So if anyone's waiting for the old stream, hopefully you'll come back here and join us for the new stream.
See, I don't know what that means.
All right, so welcome to Gary's Guitars weekly question and answer session. Guitar talk. What else do we say about it?
June 16th, 2021.
Yes.
For the first time, I don't have my bandana on
Yes.
because we're
We're
almost
slowly
maskless,
demasking.
which is exciting, and musicians are gigging, and things are starting to happen again because we're doing good.
Yeah.
At least in New Hampshire and New England in general. So, maybe it's appropriate that we're starting a new phase, the almost post-pandemic one. The premise is we talk about guitar stuff, and anybody out there cares to join in, please do, with questions and answers and ideas, and we'll come up with some topics, which we have already, but it's pretty much totally spontaneous, so feel free.
So spontaneous that we don't know what's going on.
It looks right over there.
Don't look at that.
I know, well, it's right there.
But you kind of look at. That's why I keep turning
I'll
around.
stare at the pick guards.
Let's see. Hopefully, and there's going to be a couple of. Let's see here. Anyway, keep talking, Gary.
Oh, okay. I thought we were on pause somehow. I don't know how many times. This is probably like the 12th or 13th edition. So we've been doing it for a while and getting some good responses. And hopefully some of our regulars will join us soon. They're not confused.
They'll find us somehow. If you found us somehow, write a message in the comments. Let us know, because we really don't know if there's anyone out there. All right, there's two people there, one of which is me.
You don't
So
count.
I don't count. So there's one person out there, whoever you are. All right.
Thank you
So,
for finding us.
Yes. Let's just get going. I'm having a really bad half an hour. Where'd my notes go?
I don't know. You told me you had ideas, but you weren't going to tell me what they were.
Yeah, I had notes and they're sitting here.
We're going to preserve the spontaneity.
Well, now it's going to be super spontaneous because my notes are missing.
Well, we can start with my egg.
Yes, we'll start with your topic.
I thought about it enough to even give it a name. Low
Okay.
action and or good tone.
Okay.
Kind of combines two very common elements of what we do here in servicing our customers and their guitars, is getting the action the way they want it and getting it sounding right. It may be surprising, but those two things can fight against each other. Thankfully, we're coming out of a action as low as possible era.
Well, I mean, but I don't know, coming out of it, because this is what happens daily. Someone comes in for a setup and they say, here's my guitar, and set the action as low as possible.
Oh, well, maybe it's because I'm not here all the time anymore. I don't.
That's what I mean. You just assume that's what they want, right?
No.
People come in all the time just asking for low action,
No, I assume they want my setup.
or they come saying that the guitar action's too high.
Oh, yeah.
The action's too high.
Sometimes it is.
That's the complaint.
Right.
First we'll start by just talking about. This is the sticky part of this. It was Doug Bennett who told me this once.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, your action should be about as high as you can stand it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get your maximum tone to action. Because as your strings get closer to the fingerboard, they're more likely to buzz. It changes the downward pressure on your bridge, which is your tone transference.
I think the fundamental thing is the more your string can move, the more sound you're going to get. especially on an acoustic guitar, but on electric too. Sound comes from the strings being moved. If your action is wicked low, it can't move very far.
Yeah.
It's going to hit a fret and buzz. So it can be played with a very light touch, and that may sound fine, but there's always that other world of banging on the strings and getting great tone, which can't be accomplished with action that's really low. And Doug Bennett, as any local player knows, his action is so high that most other people can't play it.
Can't play his guitar. Yeah.
More than once, we've handed Doug's guitar to somebody. Oh, that's a great Strat. Here, you play it.
Check it out. Yeah.
Oh, what's wrong with it? I can't play it.
Ow!
It's got Doug action, and that's where it sounds great.
Um,
So that's why and/or.
All right. So a couple other little action things. One is the action of the guitar is the guitar is the only stringed instrument really that has super low action. If you look at the classical guitar is not meant to have super low action. Violins, violas, cellos, everything, the cello family, the string family, all the action is what guitar players would call high, but what they call normal.
Right.
Because you want, if you set up a violin to have a very short bridge, it's not going to make any noise. So that's like an extreme example, but that's kind of what's happening on your guitar when you have it set up super low.
Well, it hasn't been that way forever. I want the action as low as possible. I wouldn't say it never happened in my youth, but
yeah,
we didn't think about it.
It would have, unless as long as it wasn't bothersome.
Yeah, if it was unplayable, it's unplayable. Otherwise, it's fine. But I was thinking of coming at it from, what are the advantages of low action? What are the advantages of high action? There is such a thing as action that's too high. Literally, it's so high that if you press a string to the fretboard, you're out of tune.
Yeah.
You push it down a half a step or something. And that's too high. But I think of what is great tone, and of course that's different to everybody. But in my world, from my experiences, the classic ones are Stevie Ray Vaughan and Duane Allman, Eddie Van Halen, Billy Gibbons, and I'm probably leaving somebody else out. And mostly, other than Billy Gibbons, these are guys with pretty high action that played really hard. Stevie Ray Vaughan said the same thing Doug said. Why do you use 13s? Because that's where the best sound is. You work your way up in string gauge and height, and you get it where it sounds the best, not where it plays the easiest.
Now here's the thing with the legend of Stevie Ray Vaughan, which he only used 13s for a couple of years, and he'd already backed off to 12s or something before his young passing. So even he wasn't so committed to it. He went a little crazy in that direction, but yeah.
Really got old.
I actually, this hurts. You got to play 200 shows a year.
Right.
That hurts.
But even 12s, for what he did, most people can't bend a string and handle it like that.
Yeah, and the string gives you more resistance as you bend it if if your string is stiffer. So that figures into it. What causes high action is another thing. I like to say this: the truss rod is not a magic wand embedded in your guitar neck. It's people walk in and they say like, "Hey, this needs a truss rod adjustment," and I'm like, "Not really. It just looks like you got high action." They just think, or someone told me there's this thing you can turn and make the action low. That's not it either. It regulates the straightness of the neck.
Right.
And that's it.
Which could potentially make the action too low.
Yeah, or it can make it back bow, or but a lot of other things contribute to it. Especially on acoustics, you have your neck's the top distortion, your neck kind of diving in a little bit, and your neck angle being wrong, and then there's no fixing that. Your bridge height, of course, is a place where the action can be regulated. So some guitarists can't play low no matter what. And then when the guitar is in tip-top shape, it can play, you can set it up to do any kind of play, essentially. Yeah. So you're talking about the tonal trade-off. So we talked about tonal trade-off. So what else do I have to talk about with the high action? Yeah, so we may be coming out of the give me super low action all the time.
But it'll come back.
It'll come back.
It's like disco. Every few years, oh, super low action, I gotta have it.
It never truly goes away.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, ultimately, it's personal preference. But I think the thing that people sometimes don't think about is that the guitar also has a say in this.
Yeah.
Some guitars, doesn't matter where you put the action, it's not going to improve the tone. It has a sound. But what I frequently think of is the great guitars, when it's set up just the way it wants to be, which may be high action or low action, that's when it's going to sound the best. So, irregardless of what your friends say, or Eric Johnson says, or Stevie Ray Vaughan says, or Doug Bennett says,
Yeah.
of course, obviously, you have to be comfortable with it and be able to play, but you don't need to be afraid of being challenged by it. There may be a whole other universe out there of guitar playing that you'll get used to and discover.
Yeah. Sometimes, every once in a while, if I have a guitar that has particularly high action, you can enjoy that just as another thing. I have an acoustic that's, of course, my Harmony Sovereign. I have one that hasn't had the neck reset,
Right.
And the action is just high. Then just because those things do, and there's a pleasantness to it in a way. But ease of play. But guitarists are always, every day someone comes in and goes, "Oh, I got this guitar. It's my fingers hurt when I press on the strings."
And lots of times it needs a neck reset.
Yeah, or just your finger's going to hurt when you press on a long, skinny piece of metal with tension on it. Your finger's just going to hurt. That's what playing the guitar is all about.
Right.
I think people kind of lost that a little bit too.
Yeah, the other day, I think I played pretty steady for about 2 hours, which I hadn't done in a long time, and I had to stop. My fingers hurt too much.
Yeah,
I forgot. Oh yeah, every like 45 minutes, a 15-minute break is good. But just getting into these songs and working things out. Ow! So no matter how long you've been playing, it can catch up with you.
Yeah.
And then this subject, which I didn't mention to you earlier, opens up a whole other door.
Okay.
We all talk about tone,
and
obviously we all have different preferences. But I realized there's two kinds of tone. There's affected tone, which is sort of modern, and then maybe pre-85 or so, unaffected tone. I was thinking about great tone in guitar players.
Yeah.
Wait, oh yeah, well that was Dwayne Allman with probably no effects. Oh, and then there's Eric Johnson, probably with a ton of effects, and a lot of modern players with tons of effects. And I couldn't even really compare the two. They're totally different. Because with effects, you can replicate any of those old great tones and do so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, or can you? But so Dwayne Allman plugged in the pig nose, turned up all the way. That's an effect.
Well,
but yeah, can you? First of all, folks, the tone is in the fingers.
Well, yeah.
Even if you're not a tremendous player, you can pick up an instrument and cause it to produce a sound it does not produce in other people's hands. That's happened to me. I picked up a bass that someone else was playing and started playing it, and I was in a studio, and people were like, "What did you do to that bass?" I'm like, "Nothing. I'm just playing it."
Right.
So I mean, that was a really good compliment for me. But yeah, so the reason some people, so the big tone debate, and then here's the other thing. I'm getting too meta here. Sax players are always like, tone this and tone that. That guy's got no tone. That guy, tone is just. It just is.
Right.
It's either good tone or bad tone. But like in the saxophone, like, that's that guy, Clarence Clemens, he's got no tone. It's like, oh, really? Because he makes a shit ton of noise. Should I swear on this? I don't know.
Well, I think there's. I broke it down one
more
more time.
Like it. Okay.
There's tone and there's sound.
Sound, yeah.
Okay. We can all make sounds. And
Yeah.
some of them can be great, and some of them can be good tone.
Yeah.
But I see them as two separate things.
It's subjective,
Ideally,
yeah.
we have both. And one of my favorites is Zoot Sims, saxophone player.
Mhm.
When he played, he had a very distinctive, great tone. His sound was good.
Yeah.
He played well, and it was very enjoyable. So it's not just one thing. It's getting a good basic sound and then refining that with pedals or without pedals
Yeah.
through your amp or whatever, your fingers or whatever.
I think there's always like since the birth. Let's say like who is the first widely regarded great guitarist? I might have to say Charlie Christian.
Well, you're not going to talk about tone.
Well, here's the thing. He's the beginning of it, and he was also happened to be the first guitarist to use an amplifier.
Yeah, well, the problem is it's all on 78s.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, the first guitar player, his recordings were done in a good sounding studio, able to reproduce good tone.
Yeah.
That was the challenge. So that to me starts in the 60s.
But it's all about everyone's using something that gets their sound. Everyone's plugged into an amp essentially.
Yeah.
Usually. Acoustic players, tone is a different. That's all finger tone.
Yeah, we don't know if Charlie Christian had great tone. Maybe
I suspected. Well, later in his career, he played in the Benny Goodman Sextet, was it? Yeah. And that was those recordings were that was the 50s already. Those were late 40s. Those recordings are listenable.
Yeah.
So I imagine he did, and so that's I'm just trying to make a parallel between when you plug into an amp, you're already affected.
Right. Well, yeah. If we're talking about electric guitars, acoustic guitar and tone is it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of recordings, I think you can take almost any acoustic into any halfway decent studio and come out with a pretty good acoustic sound. It's not like you can think, I don't know, Michael Hedges. His tone was so much better than everybody else's.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was good.
Well, it's subjective. Well, that goes back to this thing I was saying. It's subjective. Is Michael Hedges' tone good or is it not?
Oh yeah, I'm just talking my opinion. Everybody else has their own opinion. Some people think Slash's tone is great.
Slash, the solo on Sweet Child of Mine, please. That's tremendous.
Doesn't do anything for me.
I'm not even a fan of Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm not a fan of Slash, but you got to give that guy credit. He figured something out.
Well, Jimmy Page does it for me.
Jimmy Page also figured something out.
Billy Gibbons, sure.
Billy Gibbons,
totally different thing. Actually, I was going to single out Billy Gibbons as a good example, and don't know this at all, but I imagine he has really low action. I was thinking about his great tone. Doesn't feature much right hand. I mean, there's no like real oomph.
Right hand is just barely doing something. Yeah.
You think of Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Page, Clapton, the other guys. You can hear that right hand laying into things. Those strings are getting wailed on.
If you want to, sometime listen to the Billy Gibbons interview with Mark Maron, I think, the WTF. It was really well done. He talks about the 2 weeks he spent in hotel rooms with Jimi Hendrix, jamming and learning licks and stuff, because he was just on a tour with Jimi Hendrix, and that was his,
I have to tell you, at this point, I've been here for 30 years. I'm not sure I believe anything Billy Gibbons says.
Oh yeah, no, he's tremendous. Yeah.
Oh, he's very entertaining. He's a great guy.
So he uses super light strings. I think
it's what he says.
Yeah, he used to use 8s, and now that he's back up to 9s.
Right.
But you played with a quarter, or was it a dime? He
Peso.
played with a dime, peso for some time.
It's just his storytelling is so out there.
He's a weird dude too. Yeah.
Well, maybe everything he says is absolutely true, and maybe not. No idea.
Okay.
Is anybody
Joe,
listening?
actually, no, we got a question here.
Oh, good.
Joe, I can't read the. I just took down the. Anyways, hold on. I'm doing this on my phone instead of my tablet. Now I can't read anything. I can't see.
Got my glasses.
Marullo, Joe Marullo, Merullo. He's asking, what do you think about compression for bass in a live setting?
Well, it's become almost commonplace.
I say yes.
There, as
Please.
of 1980 something, almost every stage where the bass amp in the world has compression built into it. Sometimes it's just called a limiter.
Well, limiting is well,
similar.
limiting is extreme compression.
Yeah.
So limiting is compression of, I think, a ratio of 50 to 1, or it's a very high ratio compressor.
Right.
So that's when you just really, and so that would just shave off your transients. But compressor limiter, they get thrown around a little
Right.
bit. I use compression on bass constantly.
Mhm.
And in live situations, a little bit of compression goes a long way. Just set it for 2 to 1 or something. If you're using a pedal, don't use an aggressive. If you're using a guitar pedal, so guitar compression is meant to be like an effect. It's like you guitarists hit a pedal and they want to do something. When compression is used well, you don't even know it's there. So I would say if you're using a guitar pedal, turn the ratio way down. Just make it just barely, do something. Shave off some transients, warm up some passing tones. That's
my experience live. It depends on the amp you're using. If your amp sounds fabulous, like an Ampeg B15 on 7, get rid of the compressor. You don't need it.
Yeah, well, we talked about the Ampeg B15 several times because it's also my favorite amp. It is a compressor.
Yeah, it's
The compression is built in. It has a tube rectifier. It has those old 6-volt preamp tubes. Right. It's just like compression, and that's why it sounds so good.
But if you're playing through a PV-TNT, it sounds fine. The compression probably wouldn't hurt.
TNT is
that's a decent bass sound, and a little compression can even things out a little.
Yeah.
Its inherent sound is not perfect.
So let's talk about compression for a moment. What does compression do? It turns up the quiet stuff by turning down the loud stuff. So it shaves off. So if something crosses the threshold, it gets turned down.
Frequency-wise.
Loudness.
Volume.
Okay. So it crosses the threshold and it gets turned down at a ratio of your choosing. When I said use a gentle ratio, it's so that it doesn't get whacked back. It just gets pushed back underneath that threshold.
Oh, yeah.
So it goes past the little threshold, come back. And what that does is it makes you turn the entire thing up. That's what they call makeup gain, and makes all your notes similar in volume. But it also does something to your tone. It does this thing called rounding of the bass tone by bringing more overtones into the center of the note. It kind of creates this thing that kind of you perceive as being round.
The round sound. The brown round sound. Now, there's something to go for.
Using a Keeley bassist compressor. We have a Keeley. Keeley's compressors are nice.
Yeah,
this was his follow-up on that.
What's it called? The Guitarist Studio compressor?
We have the Keeley Paul McCartney bass compressor in here. Paul McCartney does not put his name on many things. Have you ever seen a signature model of anything? Well, the guy's so rich he doesn't need the money, but also he just uses kind of whatever he's got and whatever he likes, and that's fine. He still uses his the bass he bought in a pawn shop for $30. And he's a thrifty dude. But
saved is a penny earned.
Yeah,
$1 million saved is $1 million earned.
So, but there is a Keeley bass compressor that's a signature model of his, so that says something. And if you're going to a PA, then it gets compressed there too. A lot of times, I like to use a compressor. My new PA, actually, I have a new mixing console I use live, and actually has a compressor built in every channel. And I set them to just, not on everything, but like on a vocal or a bass, I set them to just barely turn on. But that prevents me from doing the fader dance. The less you mess with faders, by taking that little extra dynamic out, it kind of makes it more dynamic because now you're not fighting yourself. All right.
A little compression goes a long way.
True, yeah. Like I said, 2 to 1, 4 to 1 max. No, don't keep your ratio low. Keep your threshold just so it's just doing something.
Ever tell you the story of I won't name names. About 15 years ago, I won't even describe it very well. I did a session.
Okay.
One song, unrehearsed. There's a tape. Learned the song. It was a ballad. Mostly whole notes on the bass. Went in, took a couple of takes, I think the drums were done, rhythm guitar. I was there by myself. There was no other
The
musician.
players weren't there yet.
Oh, got a good take. Listen to it. Sounds good. Thanks. See ya. A few months later, I get handed a CD. Here's that song we did with some other stuff. And, oh, great. Thanks. I put it in. They compressed it to nothing.
Yeah.
My nice round sound was undistinct notes.
Yeah.
It was like, I threw it away. I never want to hear this again.
So early digital compressors sucked. Any compressor you're talking about using the Keeley pedal, any pedal compressor that's not the Boss, what's the Boss, the blue one? That's gonna sound, because it is like, the blue Boss compressor pedal.
Isn't it called a compressor? No.
It's called the compressor, but it's like
Yeah.
CS-3.
Yeah.
Compression sustainer, that's what they call
Right.
it. Because by turning up the overtones, it creates sustain as well. Anyways, those have a sound, but everything else is probably better if you get a pretty contemporary pedal. I don't think there's any other vintage compressor pedal or vintage compressors that will knock your socks off.
Or live, try it without a compressor first. It might be fine.
Okay, that's where just leave a little light compression. All right, let's move on, because here's another topic I want to talk about. And so once again, anyone out there watching can suggest a topic or ask a question in the comments, and we'll talk about that stuff. And then we bring our own topics too to kind of bridge that. And so I know there's some people out there. I can see you. I know you're out there. I can hear you leaving. That's a Rodney Dangerfield. I know you're out there. I can hear you leaving. Is this an audience or an oil painting?
Where the oil painting?
Yeah. So what I want to talk about in the mysterious list I lost, but one of the things was, first of all, actually, there's a couple things fresh on my mind. One is an easy one. Charlie Gaylord up in Portland asked about 12 strings. So what's your favorite 12 strings?
12-string guitar?
Yeah, let's talk about the 12 string.
The Guild.
Okay.
412.
There you go.
1970s. Best ever.
Yep.
Don't make them anymore. Well, they do, but they're not as good.
So I'll also mention, so Charlie happens to own a Rickenbacker and a really cool one.
Oh, electric 12?
Yeah, and he was thinking of selling it too, but I don't know what he's thinking these days. He talked to me a little bit about thinking about selling it. He's primarily a bass player. But he bought it back in the day when you could buy them and they didn't cost an arm and a leg. But Rick 12 has a sound. You can't deny that.
If you say something is the best because it makes the sound that you like and you've heard a lot, and it's a Rickenbacker.
Yeah,
Is
because
there
Tom Petty,
what other electric 12 strings?
George Harrison, Roger McGuinn. Well, I'll tell you what other electric 12 strings that don't sound like a Rickenbacker are. I own one. It's the Dan Electric 12. We're a Dan Electric dealer. We have one on order. It's been on order for half a year now. They're just not shipping any. They're not getting any 12 strings or something. I don't know. But the Dan Electric 12 string of the basic 59, Dan Electric is a really cool 12 string guitar. And I used one last week at a gig.
Yeah, it's cool. Alternative.
It's got the lipstick pickups.
Well, you know what's unique about the Rick? Strings are reversed.
Strings are reversed on that, yeah.
Which, when you think about it, doesn't make any sense.
Or it makes all the sense.
Right.
Is Chris Lammy out there? Chris, chime in. Chris has a Rick, and then he asked me to change the strings on his acoustic.
Oh,
because he's so used to playing the Rick that he was stumbling over. He wasn't hitting the low string.
If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, in a 12-string set, the 4 lower strings have a sort of normal size acoustic string or electric string, and then a much smaller string is the octave string. And normally the octave string is on top of the guitar from here. So when you strum down, you hit them both. But Rickenbacker, for some reason, put the bigger string on top. So in my mind, when you strum down, you're missing most of those little strings in between the big strings, but you do sort of hit them.
But here's what makes it, so having the small string in front of you is kind of the way it's done ordinarily. But it makes you launch the octave string before your fundamental.
Right.
where if you're hitting the fundamental note and then the octave kind of chimes in afterwards, it's less jarring, I guess. Right. And then, but for someone like Chris, who's been a punk rocker, playing downstrokes.
Right. You want to hit the big string.
Yeah. You want to hit the big string first, because if you hit that little string, and then sometimes you hit a string, you only hit one of the strings. And if you only hit that little string, then it's ridiculous.
Right.
Look, I think you chimed in.
Fender did make a very limited. There were some Strat 12 strings, I think. I remember Mike Endicott made a couple for customers.
Yeah. The Villager. So the Fender Villager was an acoustic.
Right. That's right. He took a Villager neck and jammed it on a Strat somehow.
And I actually went to think, because when I was looking for a 12-string electric, I was like, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you could, so the Villager back then, was an acoustic that was actually made by Harmony. Fender didn't make their own acoustics ever. They're always manufactured in someone else's. Harmony was the largest guitar manufacturer in America, probably, and they commissioned them to make Fender acoustics.
Right. Sears can do it. We can do it.
Yeah. And so a lot of those early Fender acoustics are with the 6 on the side headstock and stuff. But all those 60s ones, I think they're Harmony guitars, and which are cool because I love Harmony guitars. But the Villager acoustic, yeah. And so, and I found a Villager neck, but it wasn't on a body, so you'd know that.
Widely known for its lead pipe. It had inside the
inside the guitar, yeah.
It's clamped to the neck block and the heel block. A lead pipe.
Yeah.
1 inch in diameter. This guitar ain't collapsing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Of course, it didn't sound very good either. But, I can't think of any other. Did Gretsch ever make a 12? They might have.
Gretsch, Gretsch makes a 12-string now.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to get one on my hands on one of those. Yeah. And I have a Seagull acoustic 12. Well, I got the Harmony Sovereign 12. That has the trapeze tailpiece rather than the through the body pins. And it is the sound of, so people like Jimmy Page and Pete Townsend said, we bought Harmony guitars in the 60s and Keith Richards because that's what our blues heroes played.
Right.
We didn't want to buy a Gibson 12-string. We wanted a Harmony 12. So they had Sovereigns.
Right.
And so Jimmy Page on Stairway to Heaven played a Harmony Sovereign.
Right.
And Pete Townsend on Magic Bus played a Harmony Sovereign. And Keith Richards on probably Play With Fire or something, like early Stones stuff that had a 12-string. No one knew this until about 5 years ago. Yeah. So you could still get a Harmony Sovereign 12-string for like a couple $100. Now, everyone's like, I want the guitar that Jimmy Page had. Which actually might segue into my next topic, if no one else happens to suggest a topic. Chris did chime in and say that to get the real the sound of the real Rec 12, you need pyramid flat wounds. That's the
other people say that about pyramid strings.
Yeah.
You want to get the sound of somebody.
Well, that's what pyramid was. What people claim Paul McCartney used. So for a while, people were forcing, putting pyramid flat wounds on Hofner basses. Now everyone's talking about labella on the Hofner, but Paul McCartney himself couldn't tell you what strings he used. I remember he sat down with Guitar Player magazine. They're like, "Tell us what strings he used." He's like, "I don't know, whatever's on it." I don't know.
I thought it was all roto sounds from the British guys. Late 60s, anyway.
Yeah.
The roto sound revolution was pretty big.
Yeah. And they've ridden that revolution up until the current day. But the reason this brings up something is, the cost of harmonies skyrocketing because of online forum discussions and stuff. My other big topic for today was going to be guitar speculating or buying investment guitars. Whoa, look at those eyes roll.
We're going into overtime.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. This might be a two-parter, actually. Because
maybe we should keep it simple to start.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I opened the store in 1989, I remember because I wrote it on my bank loan application. Because I had to get a little loan from the bank to do it. And to get into the lucrative vintage guitar market. Which in 1989 was going wild.
Yeah.
We've
I've
just
heard
gone past the 3 or 4 years where guitar values doubled every year,
Mm-hmm.
which
A
was the early days.
Stratocaster at your old store used to cost $425.
Yeah, and that was up for 125 5 years before. Um, so yes, and me and everybody I knew were okay. What's next?
Mhm.
Fender's going wild, Gibson's going wild, Martin's going wild. What about Dan Electros? Will these ever be worth any money? And right now we can only get $69 for them, but
Mhm.
maybe we should start stashing them away. They'll be worth like $300 someday. Well, of course we didn't because we were too busy playing them and selling them. But
Yeah.
so that's my early experience with speculating,
Yes.
and it's certainly gone massive.
So it goes up and down. There are peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
And so it's because it's a speculative market. It's not a market. So it's supply and demand have a lot to do with it. So supply is low. Right now, supply is low. Demand is high in guitars. And so used guitars, even if they're not vintage or just cool used guitars, go for a bunch of money. If you have used guitars that you want to sell, now is the time to do it. If you have a Marshall stack you want to sell, now is not the time to do it.
Yeah.
Because supply is high and demand is low. Or demand is especially low.
Right.
So the reason this popped in my mind is that I have some friends who are like, oh yeah, I want to buy this as an investment guitar. And it's a little dangerous sometimes because the prices do come down. The last big bubble we had would be after the 2009, 2008, 2009.
Yeah, it was guitar values went up steadily from 1989 to 2008.
Yeah.
I know a guy. Took his 57 Strat to the Austin Guitar Show in 2008 and turned down an offer of $35,000.
Yeah.
Came back home. Housing market burst. Everything goes bad. 2009, guitar values go down the tank. He takes the same guitar to the same show and got $15,000 for it, and was happy to do it. So it went down more than 50%, and it hasn't totally recovered from that, but it's getting close.
Yeah. So because the guitar demand that probably increased supply. So you have this miniature financial catastrophe, the Great Recession, and people need a little extra money to sell their extra guitar, and then the market is full of guitars.
Right.
Long term, though, if you look at the long term, you're really talking about investing. Well, here's one thing I do tell people: if you get a premium savings account, I get offers in the mail. I think a bunch of people do. Come save with us at American Express or ING Bank. We will give you 0.4% interest on your savings account.
Oh boy.
Which is more than I get from my regular bank. But like that, so money in the bank. And so right now, probably this year we'll have 3% inflation or something. Our inflation is usually a couple percent at least. So if you have cash in the bank, it's going to be worth less in a year. If you look at it that way.
Right.
Now you got to have some cash in the bank. Don't spend all your money because sometimes you just need money.
Well, unless it's on guitars.
Yes, in that
Right.
case, you have permission to buy any guitar, really. So so buying an investment guitar might be a good thing because the best thing about that is you can play it in the meantime. You can enjoy it, and then in 10 or 20 years, you can sell it if you can bring your heart to sell it. But there are some stinkers. So here's the hypothetical question, and people watching can chime in too. So picture this. You found a check for $5,000 you didn't know you had. You just clean out your jeans. Oh yeah, this money that you just forgot about in town. So you have $5,000 to buy a guitar, and you want a guitar that will hold its value. What guitar would you buy?
A good one.
Yeah.
Santa Cruz, Collings.
Really?
Those pop into my head. Because I don't think $5,000 is going to buy you a highly valuable vintage guitar anymore. So you're stuck with what's relatively new and available.
Because so
I
that
saw that Linda Manzer guitar a few months
Oh,
ago.
yeah,
We
yeah.
did an appraisal. A highly regarded small builder from Canada. He paid $6,000 for it like 20 years ago. Brand new. and it is now they're selling for 15,000.
Yeah.
Used, even though it was 6,000 new.
Yeah.
Because she became popular. But I think you have to. The key to it, if you're looking at the entire picture, is why is there a vintage guitar market? Initially, it was from all those guitar heroes, the roots of rock and roll, popular blues. Duane Allman played it. Elvis Presley played D28 or whatever. So those guitars that you could hear on your heroes play were the first ones to be the 59 Les Pauls, the original Strats and Tellys, the Muddy Waters, whatever. But now we're at a point where it's been so long between guitar heroes. Guitar is not even that prominent in popular music anymore. It's out there and it's prominent, but not on the radio much unless you're listening to oldies. So it's gotten pretty unclear as to what, if anything, is going to become highly valuable like those. Another brief story, the guy, letter in Vintage Guitar Magazine, all my friends said I was out of my mind when they bought a 59 Les Paul for $6,000 in 1972. I just sold it for $225,000. And this was 25 years ago. That's probably not going to happen anymore unless there's a new guitar heroes or guitar comes back in a big way in popular music.
Let's take a step back here for a second, because you were saying Santa Cruz or Collings. Those are the guitars I would not buy. To answer my own question, I'd stay away from anything that is opinion based. In that, I think a certain name. Now, the guy who had that, what's her name, Manzer?
Linda Manzer.
He was lucky. He bought a great guitar. Everyone later learned that this person made great guitars, and his guitars were a lot of luck. So there's some luck, but also you can trust your ears. But yeah, buying a small maker guitar, man, that's a tough one. Remember that guitar that came through here? It was made by a guy whose name was, as signed inside the guitar, Martin Taylor.
Oh yes, right.
So if your name is Martin Taylor, try Googling Martin Taylor guitar. We could never find this guy. It was a small maker, and it was an okay guitar.
Wait, there's a company called Martin, and there's a company called Taylor. We'll never find it.
Yeah, the small maker stuff. So I would say something like a second tier Fender, a 70s P bass are still underpriced. I think 80s P basses are actually underpriced. Made in Japan P basses, I think, maybe underpriced. Lee's undersold one about a year ago. Just not really thinking like, oh, it's a good Japanese P bass, sure, whatever it was, $500. I'll take that. Yeah, find the thing that hasn't exploded. For me, it was Harmony and K guitars. They used to be everywhere for $100.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted them, and so I started buying them. And that's good for me.
Right.
But find the next thing that's undervalued, and
if you can.
Yeah,
there's a lot of choices now. Are Tetons going to be valuable?
Who knows? Well, right now they're out of stock, so
right.
people like them.
Supply,
supply and demand. It's the. So it is dangerous to buy investment guitars.
Right.
It's dangerous to buy contemporary guitars as investment guitars. That's why that Santa Cruz thing threw me for a loop there. Some people are buying custom shop guitars, going like, oh, Fender custom shop, and they don't have a very good resale right now.
Fender in particular, there's just too many Fender custom shops out there.
Yeah.
The first few years it was cool. I don't know how they're making a few hundred a year or something. You're lucky to see one or find one. Now it seems like half the people I know have had one or own one or buying one. They're kind of everywhere.
Yeah, and they're some keep value, some don't. And which one do you know? 'Cause I guess the different makers in the custom shop have different reputations, and people. I want one made by so and so, or I got one scheduled for And yeah, so that's a tough one. Fender custom shop instruments.
Well, let me explain my Santa Cruz Collings.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah.
Actually, it's because of inflation. I think it's a good idea. You go and buy a a really good $5,000 guitar now.
Mhm.
Say I'd probably go with Collings first. Might get one of those Les Pauls.
Oh yeah,
maybe an
those are good.
acoustic.
Yeah.
Something that is pretty widely regarded as one
Mhm.
of the best guitars being made. Um, and enjoy it for 15 or 20 years and hope that inflation continues. And now, even though it's used, it's worth $8,000
Yeah, I mean,
because
that's
the new one is
possible,
now
yeah.
$12,000.
Yeah, and then what's it? So yeah, that's possible.
Of course, if you want to get rich, you got to buy 20 of them
Yeah.
or 100.
Yeah, and put them all away and don't use them, and then but you have to be right too.
Right. Well,
That's the other thing. So
that's why it's called speculating.
But so, is there any growth left? What do you think of the ceiling? When is it going to stop? What do you think?
Guitar collecting?
And just guitar values. When are they going to just come? People are just going to go, okay, that's too much money. I'm not buying it.
I almost think it stopped years ago.
Really? No, but the prices are going up.
But they're not back where they were.
Yeah.
2008, that 57 Strat. Maybe it's worth 25, 30 grand now, but I bet it's not worth 35.
Strats, yeah, but Les Pauls never really. Les Pauls are
Well,
more
the
valuable
59
than
Les Paul got such a mystique,
yeah.
and everything's known. There were a set number of them made. There'll
Mhm.
never be any more. 57 Strat, a 62 Strat, a 53 Strat, whatever. There's thousands and thousands of them. And those, all the good stuff, in my mind, is now in collectors' hands, and they're selling to other collectors because
Mhm.
they don't even want to sell it to a player because they might play
They
it.
might play.
Then it's not worth anything.
Yeah.
So they're gone.
But that moves the players down to another tier of instrument. That's
Well,
why
that's why the
the
70s
pre-CBS to the post-CBS or
Right.
the 70s era Fender
gone up.
have
But-
gone up. Yeah.
I guess I could conceive of a 72 P bass being worth $50,000 someday, but
Yeah, it's tough to.
I hope not.
Yeah, right.
That's way too much money for that bass.
Don't pay that, folks. Yeah.
It's okay.
What about the Martin world right now? Martin took a little ding from other high-end because it used to be Martin or nothing, right? Now there are other high-end guitar companies, teaching Martin a
Harmony
lesson.
Sovereigns were okay for some people,
Yeah.
and for me, Guilds, the poor man's Martin.
Yeah.
Martin made a huge mistake. I almost called them up, but what do I know when they know to talk to me? Why are you making $500 guitars?
Mm-hmm.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. If I own the company that made the greatest guitars in the world that everybody in the world wants, and they're saving up to buy a Martin, and I've got a Yamaha, but I really want a Martin, and now you make these $500 guitars that aren't very good, and everybody has them, and now, well, I got a Martin, but I think I like the Seagull better. It's gone. The Martin Mystique is pretty much gone.
Okay. So here's the other side of that
In my
coin, though.
opinion.
Okay, so there's opinion, and it's cool. And here's the other side. People ask me, why do companies do this? Why do they make the cheap thing? It's for the money. You'll sell a lot more of something if you're selling a $500 ticket item than if you sell a $3,000 ticket item. And so for every one $3,000 guitar you sell, you could probably sell 20 $500 guitars. And then they get an opportunity to trade on their own name. So this is the quality of Martin. Every time someone walks in here with a plywood Martin, I'll just it says Martin, but
it's not a real Martin.
And then they get upset. You hurt their feelings.
No.
I finally saved up and I bought a Martin. It's like, oh yeah,
Didn't save enough.
That's a little mean, but true. But yeah, Fender does that with these Classic 5 Squire, the Squire Classic 5 guitars. They compete directly with their Fender guitars, I think. They're really good.
Yeah.
They cost half as much.
Well, that works. I mean, everybody in the world also wants a good Fender electric guitar, and they're pretty affordable. You can get the best Fender electric guitar.
Yeah.
It's not a custom shop for way less than a Martin.
Yeah.
And you get the Squire, which is perfectly good. But the acoustic is just such a different world. And Martin had such unique mystique about it. There was nobody else up there. Everybody else was a step down. It was Martin is God, and then these are the disciples or something.
Yeah.
And it's not that way anymore. Now Taylor's up there with Martin.
Yeah.
and Collings and Santa Cruz and
So there obviously was room in the market for
yeah,
a lot more than Martin was doing or making. And that's the other thing, we kind of upscaled the guitar buying. It used to be like $600 for a guitar. You got to be crazy. Every once in a while, someone walks in. And like, how much is a guitar? It's like, well, they start at $200 and they go up from there.
Karen
What
and I
about a
were-
used guitar? Oh yeah, this one over here is used. It's $3,000.
Karen and I were having a conversation about our parents recently, and something how coffee got in there, and I just dawned. I heard her father saying many years ago, "You paid 25 cents for a cup of coffee? Are you out of your mind?" Oh yeah, that's right. Coffee used to be like a nickel a cup.
Yeah,
Quarter. That's outrageous.
quarter. You know, that's crazy. You know, you can spend $8 on a cup of coffee. Yeah. Karen's a coffeeholic, right? She gets the 4 shots and everything.
Oh well, yeah, lots of coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, anyways, that's
In one
neither
cup.
here nor there.
Yes.
So, to wrap up that guitar speculation, my advice is go for it, but find something you like, you know about, and you're willing to educate yourself about, and then find something that's a little undervalued. And right now, I'd say down electrodes are still undervalued. Silvertones and Ks and harmonies are still undervalued.
The key word Mark just said that I would support is education,
Yeah.
because I think when you can speculate financially on something and you enjoy it, that's the reward.
Yeah.
And the guitar world is so deep, so long, so wide. You could spend the rest of your life researching harmony guitars and how they compare to other guitars and how the value changes, which ones are good, which ones are not good, which are not collectible, whatever. So if you're into it, it's a great thing to do, and you might make money at it. But the more you know, the more likely you will be to make money, because we see lots of people make all kinds of mistakes.
Yeah.
Look at what I bought, and I got it for
It's a red label Yamaha.
$700, and I know it's it's a piece of junk, and it's worth nothing.
Oh yeah.
Because they didn't know, they didn't look, they don't know about guitars, they don't know about.
Or they know about the name and the reputation,
Yeah,
but they don't know that
that's
that particular guitar is no good. Or it's so hard to pronounce a guitar unusable like that. I had to put the last rights on a guitar yesterday. I came in with an Area 12-string. So I think it just needs a tuning machine and a bridge and a saddle. I'm like, no, your bridge is coming up, your neck set's screwed, and there's this and that, and you see how that's rippled up there, and that piece of metal thing. Yeah.
Well, gotta do it sometimes.
Yeah.
Although there's the occasional, well, it's a family heirloom. It was my great grandfather's, and I know it's never going to work, but I'll spend $1,000 because I want to hang it on the wall. Well, go home and think about it, and if you still want to do it in 3 weeks, we'll do it.
Yeah, and then they never pick it up because
Right.
they don't. All right, it's happened again. You've squandered another perfectly good hour listening to Guitar Talk.
Almost an hour. We were 10 minutes.
We did. We started in a little late. Sorry for those who lost in the shuffle. What happened was the YouTube thing wanted us. It was set to use key, and then I could unset it, and And so I opened the software where I could stream key it, and that software was doing something I don't know what it was doing.
We were watching videos of your band for a while while you were trying to get it to work.
Yeah, it was just, that thing was just quite frustrating. But thanks again for joining us, Gary's Guitars. If you hit the like button, we will like it. And then
Try to be
subscribe.
on time next week.
And we'll try to not to pull a fast one and then start a new stream and close the old stream. And write questions. If you have any questions, if you're not watching this in real time, but you want to ask a question, write it down in the comments area, and then we'll address your thing next time. We hope to see you then. So, anything else?
No.
All right. Stand by for the end.
Ciao, ciao.
Continue to stand by.